We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Monday edition of my ever-expanding global media empire known as Free Association Radio. And today's show is the Monday Mashup, and it's featuring me. This is my 60-minute take on the news and the views in the world around you. I like to talk to you a little bit about my life, and maybe there is something in my life which may have some meaning for you. Sometimes they converge, sometimes they don't. And if they do, God bless. That's great. If they don't, well, please forgive me. So here we are. It is the 2nd of June. The big headline in alternative research and news today is that the white hats who have been popularized and brought to the attention of the alternative research community via David Wilcock and Benjamin Fulford are supposed to be, and Drake, by the way, the mysterious Drake, are supposed to be making their arrests today. They are going to go out and they are going to start arresting these evil bastards that are quickly turning this planet into a living hell, both from a temperature perspective and from a living perspective or a personal perspective. I don't know if you've seen the temperatures in the Midwest, but they are off the charts, and they have been off the charts now for over a week. So we're talking high 90s every day, reaching into the 100s, and 90% humidity. These are just brutal temperatures. And they're taxing power systems, obviously. The grid of the United States, the power grid of the United States, especially in the Midwest, is threatened because of this. Let's throw on top of this the fires that have been out of control in New Mexico and Colorado. They're somewhat subsiding now, but the amount of damage has just been epic, especially in terms of Colorado. You throw that into the mix. Oh, and by the way, there are fires in Spain now, which doubled in almost a record amount of time. So now we have Spanish fires. And what we're staring down is literally a summer in hell. And yesterday, I was sent a video very early in the morning of, I believe it was reactor 2. It was reactor 2 or 1, I'm not sure. In Fukushima. It was not 4, it was 2 or 1, and the coolant ran out. And the video it was almost like it was a small sun that was glowing, and then there was a flash, an orange flash. And this happened in Fukushima yesterday. Hundreds of thousands of people protesting in the streets of Japan due to Japan's and TEPCO's stubbornness around putting their reactors back online. And you won't see that on the evening news or in your headlines if you happen to use Yahoo. What you will see, though, is that Anderson Cooper is gay. Now, is that news? I mean, who didn't know that Anderson Cooper was gay? Come on. Oh, by the way, I'm gay. Of course you're gay. We've known you're gay for over a decade. Who are you fooling? You're not fooling anybody. I'm going to have less respect for you for coming out and being gay, because now you're a front runner. Now it's okay to be gay. No, in fact, it's more than okay to be gay. It is cool to be gay. You're a rebel, man. You're a rebel. You're a rebel for rights. Right on. You're a front runner. You're a phony. You've always been a phony. Nobody should respect you for coming out, for your decision to tell everybody that you're gay, especially since we've known you're gay for at least 10 years. You think somebody sees this and says, oh my gosh, Anderson Cooper is gay. He has such courage. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. By the way, did you know that Anderson Cooper and Chuck Barris have the same birthday? They're both Geminis. They both have the same birthday. And what do they both have in common? Well, they both are intelligence assets. Chuck Barris is one of my... Chuck Barris has got to be one of the strangest stories of the 20th century. The man that brought you the Gong Show and the dating game. That guy was theoretically also a CIA hitman. He wrote a book about it. They made a movie out of it. Sam Rockwell plays Chuck Barris. And he would literally be triggered in this movie by George Clooney. George Clooney was his handler in the movie. That should tell you a lot, shouldn't it? And what happens is he goes out and he travels and he goes out and he snuffs people. Well, he wrote a book about it. And he shares the same birthday of Anderson Cooper, and it's been known for quite a while. Anderson Cooper worked for the CIA in college. He openly admits that. At least he was open about that. So, we're in Jupiter and Gemini, and we're going to see more of these sort of dualistic and double sort of agents and double agencies, servants of the double agencies. It's all going to come out. We're going to see this stuff now because Jupiter expands. Maybe Anderson Cooper sat down with his astrologer and they looked at his chart and said, the Jupiter is conjunct your sun right now. This would be a very good time to come out. In fact, you would actually benefit from it. In fact, you might even actually be able to make a great deal of money right now because of this. I think there's a book deal that you can garner. In fact, I'll bet you within a month, Anderson Cooper will have a book on the stands. And that's where we are today. But we're also dealing with hell. We're dealing with the summer in hell and what's happening right now in this country in the heat. And what are we looking at? We're looking at Uranus and Aries, heat, intense heat, spontaneous fires started by lightning coming from the sky without rain. There we go. There's Uranus and Aries squaring Pluto and Capricorn. Pluto and Capricorn, as I saw it in the Rocky Mountain region, was the mountains, the mountainous areas, the Andes, the Alps, the Himalayas of North America, the Rockies, and there we had the square. And it was very close to Colorado Springs. And what is Colorado Springs? Colorado Springs is one of the major military centers in the United States, Uranus and Aries, Aries being war, and Colorado Springs being one of the areas that was severely damaged by these fires. So we can see the major aspects begin to play out, whether in a deliberate fashion or in an indeliberate fashion, that they are just the cosmic manifestation of the holographic presentation and projection of our collective reality, our thoughts, our hopes, our aspirations, our fears, our anxieties, all manifest together in a massive mainframe, regurgitating in real time. Perhaps this is yet another layer of what we're dealing with. And if that is the case, then how do we change the program? Because, quite frankly, the program needs changing, needs alteration. Been reading a lot of stuff lately about end times. The end times calendar is right on schedule. I think what's coming next probably is going to be pestilence. I'm putting a 3-to-1 on pestilence by August. And what does pestilence look like? Pestilence, I believe, would be invasions of cicadas, grasshoppers, invasions of mosquitoes, whatever the pestle, whatever insect flavor of the month it's going to be. I'm going 3-to-1 by pestilence on August. But we are living in very perilous times for many, many reasons. And I don't want to be comical and be like Jon Stewart or Stephen Colbert, who make fun of what's happening. And the reason they make fun of what's happening is because, well, it's so dark that what else can you do at times except for take the edge off of it and make fun? Well, that's one interpretation of that type of comedy in interpreting or reinterpreting news or the events of the day or oncoming trends so that you can sort of, put your arm around each other and commiserate in that dark moment and say, can you fucking believe this? Well, and kind of laugh. Well, that's one quality or capacity of that kind of comedy. The other function of that kind of comedy is to get you used to things so that you can laugh at it and somehow you can accept it. Albert Brooks did a very funny movie. I like Albert Brooks a lot, a.k.a. Albert Einstein. That's his real name. He did a movie called In Search of Comedy in Muslim in the Muslim world. I think that's the name of the movie. It's a very funny movie, and his whole, Brooks is one of these guys that skirts reality and stage reality. And he's done a variety of kind of movies that are based on that. I think he did one called Real Life back in the 70s, which was kind of a takeoff on the Loud Family. Oh, somebody's calling. That's interesting. So Albert Brooks did this comedy, and he was like looking for, do Muslims have stand-up comedians? Do they laugh? Is comedy a part of their cultural cosmology? And it's a funny movie. But what's interesting is that by and large, I would say no, because in the Muslim world, they don't allow. They really frown upon going to movies. They frown upon going to or listening to popular music, and there's a reason why. It is not to keep people in the Middle Ages. Okay, so it's interpreted that way at times. I think that the overlying value or the underlying value to promoting people to not take in those forms of entertainment is so that they don't get programmed. Now I'll tell you how sophisticated the programming is. When I was a kid, I watched that movie Death Wish. I watched it on TV with Charles Bronson. You know what I did after that movie? I took my BB gun and I walked outside. It was 11 o'clock at night, living in suburban San Jose where there's no crime. But I walked around with my BB gun looking for guys to snuff out with my BB gun. That's how sophisticated this programming is. It was like, yeah, go get your BB gun and go walk around and take people out. And so getting back to the Jon Stewarts and the Bill Maher's and the Stephen Colbert's, they have a social function, but at the same time, when you laugh, you're allowing the information to get inside you, and it's a very sophisticated form of hidden in plain sight and predictive programming. I have 951 left. Call back 951. I'll bring you on the air. It's funny when people. I think sometimes people get confused. Am I confusing? Am I confusing brand? Because I think sometimes we go, oh, I just want to hear those cool astrology readings, and then hear me go off on these tangents. It's like, who is this guy? I don't know. I can handle the variation of theme. That's always been my struggle in life in some ways. You know, it's like, who are you? Are you an astrologer? Are you a news guy? Are you a comedian? What are you? Who are you? Are you a writer? You know, are you a radio guy? I'm everything and I'm none of them. Completely. So the Gundersons, Arne Gunderson and his wife Maggie, are very, very strong and vocal anti-nuclear advocates. They have they've paid a lot of attention to Fukushima, and these people have been in the game for a very long time. They're very into alternative energy. That's their thing. So they have something called Fairwinds Associates, which I believe promotes alternative energy. So by shutting down nuclear energy, theoretically, it could actually help them. They'll profit from it. And I'm not saying that they're anti-nuke activists because they have an investment in anti-nuclear or alternative technology that is anti-nuclear in its application, but that's what they do, and they are very political. Arne Gunderson is featured prominently on Jeff Rentz's website, and he has a lot of information about Fukushima. A lot of it is quite good. But they came out yesterday and they said, we stopped watching Jon Stewart as long as he accepts sponsorship of nuclear industry. It's horrible. He was our favorite commentator. Arne Gunderson says, Fairwinds Associates, their advertising budget doubled. They're now on the Jon Stewart Show, and he has accepted NEI as a sponsor. Maggie Gunderson, we think that's horrible, and we've stopped watching Jon Stewart as long as that's going on, and he was our favorite commentator. The ads are factually wrong. They're making it into mainstream media. So my question to the Gundersons is, if you're so sophisticated around what's happening with nuclear power in Fukushima, how can you not be sophisticated enough to understand that Jon Stewart is a gatekeeper? How can you be so blind so that when he does this, you would be shocked, mortified, and recoil and try to pull your ads and be a sponsor of a show? This is okay. I would bet every single dollar I have in my banking account right now, which is not very much, but I'd do it. I would bet that Arne and his wife are liberals. They're liberals. And they just threw in with Jon Stewart because, well, Jon Stewart, after you peel everything away, probably is the most, he's fairly liberal on a lot of levels. I mean, I think he would check in on, even though he likes his little Ron Paul moments, his default, I believe, would be liberals, because liberals love Jon Stewart. They love him. And they kind of like Colbert because they poke fun at conservatives. They poke a little fun at liberals, but I would say it's more conservative poking than not, right? And so there's the default. Well, John Stewart's a liberal. He stands for all the right things. Well, apparently he doesn't. And if you dug a little deeper, Mr. and Mrs. Gunderson, you'd know that John Stewart's brother is the head of the New York Stock Exchange. Larry Leibovitz, John Stewart's brother, is the head of the New York Stock Exchange. Do your homework. Understand who these people are. They're not there to promote your agenda unless your agenda is with their agenda, and your agenda is not with their agenda. And now you're shocked. You people, just kill your fucking idols. They're done. There's nobody out there, nobody, that can be a figurehead for any kind of a movement that is really going to make a huge dent in a way that would be relevant. I'm sorry. You know, look, there are things I like about David Icke. I've been hard on David Icke. A lot of my friends really like David Icke. A lot of people listening to the show really like David Icke. A lot of people listening really like Alex Jones. I think you've got to, you know, deal with both of what both of them say. You've got to deal with what they say in a very filtered way. Okay, you just can't co-sign on everything that Alex Jones and David Icke say. You can't. And Alex Jones is, I believe, around because he's fulfilling an agenda. He's fulfilling a role. I think Alex Jones is a huge gatekeeper. I've said this before. And a lot of people have looked into Alex Jones and who his sponsors are. And, you know, there's a very prominent theme with Alex Jones. All you got to do is look at his lawyer who represents the Bronfmans, very powerful lawyer who represents one of the most powerful Rothschild network families on the planet. You can't tell me that Alex Jones is not connected, okay? So I don't know. I just don't know of anybody out there who is quote-unquote trustworthy in a big way. You might find smaller people. You know, everybody's got something. Everybody's got, you know, like, I love Jay Weidner, and I'm trying to get Jay back on the show soon. But there are people who say, oh, Jay Weidner, well, he's this and he's that. You've got to be careful with Jay Weidner. You know, Visible. Oh, Visible's a Rosicrucian. You got to, you know, he's even admitted he's a Mason. You got to be careful with Visible. And then there's Brother Nathaniel, you know, Kapner or whatever his name is. The guy who dresses up as an Orthodox priest and he rails against his own Jewish legacy and background and culture. There are people who say he's a gatekeeper. And he's out there because he's trying, you know, he's dressed up in this clown suit. And in some ways, poking fun. He's kind of like a John Stewart of the ecumenical gate. I could just go down the list and do the, you know, oh, he's got this issue. Oh, he's got this issue. Oh, she's got that issue. And, you know, so at the end of the day, you know, who can you trust? I mean, and this is even in the alternative world. And I'm not even talking about the mainstream world. Maybe you could put a little faith in Judge Napolitano. That guy seems to be on the right side of most things. Salente seems to be on the right side of most things. But I've long ago disabused myself of anybody being able to come in with a white hat and save the day. I, quite frankly, don't think it's going to happen that way. And do I know what's going to happen? Well, I can give you some ideas. I can give you a few scenarios. Scenario number one is everything gets so bad that there is a full-scale revolution in this country. And we wind up, you know, fighting our own government. I don't think that is out of the realm of possibility. Do I want that to happen? No. If it happens, it happens, and we'll have to deal with it. I don't think it's that far off, to be honest with you. I think this whole thing with Obamacare is yet another, tightening of the noose around the neck of the American public. The American public, I'm not sure, really wants Obamacare the way it is, and they certainly don't want it forced down their throats as a mandate. And it became a mandate, and the Supreme Court basically took a knife. They took a knife and they went right down the center of the Constitution. And it was John Roberts, the deciding vote, the guy that Obama appointed, John Roberts, right? No, Roberts came in under Bush. My bad. John Roberts took a knife right down the center of the Constitution. Now, if you go back to when Obama was sworn in, it was a Mercury retrograde. And I believe that the moon was void of course. So there were two major things going on. And what happened? Well, they fucked up the swearing-in ceremony. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You could take two people off the streets, hand them a script. This is a man that has teleprompters all the time, right? I mean, he could have had a very small little script that he would follow. These are people who do speeches for a living, and they could not execute a 5-minute exercise with one hand on the Bible. It was almost like they were laughing through it. They were making a mockery of the swearing-in ceremony. So then what happened? Well, they didn't just do take two. Sorry, we'll be back in 5 minutes. We're going to go have a smoke and a coffee. We're going to clear our heads. We're going to come back in 5 minutes. You guys can go use the restroom. We're going to do it again. No, instead, they went inside the White House. They went into a particular room. They did it privately. They had a few photographers there, and they more than likely changed the copy or the text that Obama was putting his hand on. And that's what happened. And it was John Roberts. So how when this happens and Roberts is the deciding vote, are you surprised? Now Americans are angry because the mandate now clears the way. There is precedent. There is judicial precedent that the government now can determine what is right, what is wrong for you in a way that they've never been able to do before. This is case precedent. If they say you are eating too many Skittles, or America's eating too many Skittles, they can take Skittles away. Or they can mandate that for every pack of Skittles that you eat, you must eat 4 florets of genetically modified broccoli. That's where we are with this. So one scenario, theoretically, is America has enough. Time to fight. Time to throw it down. Let's get it on. We'll either, die fighting, live free or die. That's the motto, right? That's one scenario. Am I in favor of that? No, I'm not. I'm not in favor of that. Clearly, I'm not. I do not advocate that. Because in a lot of ways, theoretically, that would be a really good excuse to, enact a lot of hardcore and draconian laws and move people around and put people away and take a part of the population out. And, so it's like playing into a script. And I'm not a fan of that. A lot of innocent people could suffer their lives, and it would tear the country apart. Even though the country is being torn apart, stitch by stitch, day by day, it's the way it is. But it would tear the country apart. and I'm not in favor of it. Scenario number 2, outside threat, outside influence, and that would be a war, and it would be a war with China or Russia or somebody along those lines, and it could be propagated and initiated by a conflict in another country, i.e. Syria. It could be stimulated by a potential false flag. A lot of people are talking about the Olympics. What could happen with the Olympics? Very real possibility around that. And so now you've got, this outside threat, which could change the game. You could have the outside threat with the inside threat happening simultaneously. By the way, they're not mutually exclusive. Because if there was an inside threat, well, then the outside threat theoretically would also take advantage of it, wouldn't they? It's like, oh, look, they're fighting each other. Well, let's just throw in here. Let's go in and, let's go down with one side, or let's try to peel off our own areas here. And so, if, let's say the fighting or the conflict was in the middle part of the United States. Well, what would stop China or Russia from taking on the West Coast? Because quite frankly, the dynamic on the West Coast is very different than the middle of America. So now that's another possibility. Third possibility would be some form of, contagion, spreading, well, theoretically maybe even a war. So, I mean, there's a lot of different possibilities here which would bring on the end game very quickly. There's of course, the Project Bluebeam alien scenario. That's always a possibility. There's a lot of things that are all bubbling underneath the surface, and a lot of people are aware of them, which is good in some ways. Because if we're aware of them, I think that we draw the energy away from them instead of actually drawing the energy to them. So the other scenarios would be something with the sun. That they're in the sun, by the way, the magnometer readings of the sun have been off the charts for the past few days. And we're not necessarily talking solar flares, but there's a theory going around that the transit of Venus really shifted the sun in a big way, in a very big way, and that the amount of photons and neutrinos that the sun is emitting is off the charts. The spectrometers are off the charts. They're in really high ranges. They haven't seen this high of a range since the last Venus transit. So the sun enters into the equation of being a major game changer. And everything from destabilizing technology through solar flares, satellites, communication systems, to really altering who we are at a fundamental DNA level. Maybe what's happening with the sun is that it's triggering and stimulating our quote-unquote junk DNA. So we're remembering who we are, we're understanding who we are, we're understanding kind of, what our superpowers are. Maybe our pineal glands light up and, crack open from their chrysalis state, frozen and locked down by fluoride and cathode rays being emanated from the television. We're getting close. We're getting close to all of these scenarios. And if you're not feeling it, then you're not really either alive or you're so utterly zenned out. It's, I want to know what you're taking. I think that what we have to do is we got to, and I wrote about this on my last post, by the way. If you haven't gone to my website, robertphoenix.com, you can read about what happened with the Sandusky trial and what happened with replacing Sandusky on the mural at Penn State with a good friend of mine. And one of the things that came through to me during that post was, and I've seen this now, I've seen this with people that are really into like astrotheology. Like there is no God, there is no There is no Jesus. There is, there's in terms of a strictly Orthodox religious sense, none of these things exist. They're all just, machinations of a mythology that is based on the movements of planets and the sun, and that each ancient culture had their own way of interpreting it, and therefore they assigned meaning and value to these movements in the skies and created mythologies and personae based on that. And those personae became their gods. And one of those personae was Jesus, who, by the way, is Osiris. And so what it does is it completely and utterly removes Christianity and, in a lot of ways, Islam and all these other faiths from the equation. Now, I'm not saying that everything in the Bible is correct, not even close to that. If you look at the history of the Bible and who contributed it and when and who these people were and what they left out, I mean, it's an instruction manual. There's a whole other group of people that believe that Christianity, Judaism, and Islam were started by the Pharisees. That they started these religions in order to control people. Meanwhile, they would be the high priests of the planet, being able to do whatever the fuck they want, while everybody else was prostrating themselves before an invisible God in the sky that didn't exist. That's a whole other scenario. Okay. Now, as I was writing this post on Saturday and Friday and Saturday, I kind of got into it a little bit with this woman on her Facebook page, and she's a big follower of Michael Sarion and Jordan Maxwell and Archira S. And these are all classic astrotheologians. They all deny the existence of God. They all deny the existence of Christ. That's what they're into. And not only do they deny it, they kind of deny it with vehemence. Now, look, I can understand on some level, right? Like I look at Sarion. He's a smart guy. He's done his research. He's done his homework. And some of the stuff that he says is really on the money. He loves Madame Blavatsky a lot more than I like her, to be honest with you. And I also think that he's got this, he gets kind of caught up in the Old Testament stuff of the smoting, which I'm with, by the way. I'm not a big smoting guy. And, well, why couldn't God be loving and compassionate and, all these other things? And I agree with him. I agree with him. And I think in a lot of ways the personal interpretation of that kind of God has been really promoted throughout the churches here in this country in the 20th century, particularly in the South, and the sort of the dispensationalist creeds, and God is angry and blah, 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 blah. And now God is going to, unleash his vengeance on the United States, who has fallen away, has become a sinful nation. Well, on the surface, that might actually make, if you really drill down that, okay, if you really were to think, well, has the United States fallen? Is this a sinful country? But I'm going to say something to you right now that might be controversial. I'm going to say yes. And maybe not for the reasons why you think I'm going to say it. It would be easy for me to default and say, well, of course, they're promoting homosexuality and sodomy and all these, things that they talk about in the Bible that you're not supposed to do. But I'm going to tell you what the real sin is. Real sin is ignorance. That's the biggest sin. That is the biggest sin. It's ignorance, and it's sloth, and it's laziness. And that is what is, if I were God and I looked down, that's what I'd be pissed off about. That's what I would say, hey, you better wake up. You better come to the party, because you have had a pretty good thing going on down there, and you let these jackals just snatch it from you. And they didn't even really give you anything. What did they give you? They gave you TV, which people think is free. Oh boy. They gave you public education, which you think is free. They gave you cheap food and cheap gas. And then they gave you cheap money so that you could borrow on your credit card, or when Glass-Steagall was around, you could get a house, a $500,000 house on a $25,000 a year salary without showing your income. And if I was a god and I was, quote unquote, the father, I'd be pissed off about that. I would say, what the fuck are you doing? I mean, I am a father, and I have those moments with my kid. What the fuck are you doing? And what do you do? What do you do when your kid fucks up? You take something away from them, right? Unless you're old school and you spank them. I'm not a spanker. You take something, you think, okay, you got to figure this out, man. You know, you got to put this into your mainframe, and you got to make an adjustment in your program. And until you do that, you're not going to get this. But that's what a parent does. So if God is a parent, I mean, they would say, hey, I got to take some things away from you because you're not getting this. Well, we're already having a lot of our other things taken away from us, like our freedoms, theoretically, our elected officials representing us, our food, which is becoming synthetic. Our air isn't even our air anymore. So we're getting all these things taken away from us and they're not even by God, theoretically, or the Father, theoretically. You know, they're from man. So if there is this overarching sort of principle, which I believe you cannot discount. I mean, in my own personal life, I've experienced this. I've got a friend right now. I have a friend who, I'm going to tell you, this guy has been suicidal. Suicidal. Most of his adult life because of things that happened to him. And I've watched him over the course of the last 3 years of his life go from a crisis where he was hit by a car, suspended upside down and on the freeway, hanging from his seatbelts, cut away, and then having to process that event and everything else in his life prior to that. I have seen the unfoldment of a divine plan in this guy's life. It bought him time. This accident bought him time so that he could work with workman's comp, he could work with therapists, he could have his rent paid. He didn't have to be on the freaking hamster wheel of life. And what did he do? He honored that. He didn't squander it away. He didn't go out and get stinking drunk. You know, he had his issues, he had his challenges, he had his private hells that he stayed at home with and worked through. But he has been working with this energy to heal the intense trauma of his life that had gone before this moment in time. And what's been the result of this? Well, the result is that he's realized that he's been working with a divine dispensation of grace and love. And the more that he's been giving that credence and giving that consciousness and conscious awareness, the more it's been giving back to him. So what are we seeing now? I'm seeing a deepening of his relationship with what we would call, quote unquote, God. This comes from a guy, and I'm going to tell you a story right now. He had a brother that had brain cancer. And the brain cancer had eaten away his brother's face. Okay? And on the recommendation of the surgeons and the oncologists, they recommended that his nose be removed. And so they did, and they put in kind of a plastic nose while the cancer continued to eat away at his brain. And this was his brother. And both these guys were adopted. And they were adopted together. And this brother was his light. He was his everything. He was his big brother. And his brother's face became so horrific that his own children wouldn't even walk into the bedroom to see him while he was Well, he was dying because he was scary. He looked like a monster. Think about how that man's heart was breaking in a million pieces. So they decided that the best thing to do would be to end his life. And they talked with their family physician. And the family physician said, I can help you. And he provided them with, I believe, about 6 hypodermic needles of morphine. And while the act of ending somebody's life like that is humane in many ways, in many respects, the execution, literally and figuratively, is a whole other matter. Who is going to push those needles through that guy's skin, through that man's skin, and who's going to press down on the hypodermic needles and end his life? Well, it was originally going to be his wife, and she couldn't stomach it. Then it was going to be his adopted father, and he couldn't get there. So it fell to my friend. And my friend did the deed. Well, the problem is that it wasn't working. And instead of ushering his brother out, the brother was flailing uncontrollably, foaming at the mouth. There was complications. It wasn't going the way that the doctor had diagnosed it would go. And so he called the doctor and he said, what do I do? He said, you go get a pillow and you put it over his face. And so my friend wound up killing his brother. And that's what happened. And he lived with that from that day forward. Not only did he lose his brother, but he was burdened with the guilt of something he should never have been doing. And he did it out of compassion, and he did it out of love. But I got to tell you, that event crushed him. And it basically wiped out most of his adult life. And so when he went and had this accident, what did he do? He spent 3 years going back and healing that moment. And there's more. There's more to his story, and I'd love for him to be able to write a book at some point. But I'll tell you where he is now. This is a guy that was angry at God. And I mean angry at God for A, having his brother go through that, B, having to do what he did, and C, his inability to handle that. He was angry. And now he's done a 180. And he's not a Bible thumper. I'll tell you right now, this guy is going to church. Something he would never thought he would have done. And I'm sharing this with you, not because I'm not, I'm advocating you go do that, but I'm sharing this with you because I think it's important for us to get in touch with the piece of us that is sacred, that is holy, that is divine, and that we honor and respect and love and promote more than any other aspect in our lives. And it's not about self. It's not about believing in yourself. That's a different thing. You can have belief in your abilities or confidence in your abilities, but you got to realize you're not the only thing out there. And if you think you are, you're arrogant and you're going to miss it. Now, the flip side of this is that you just put everything on God or, whatever name you want to, Jesus, whatever entity you want to name, and then you do nothing. You sit on your ass, you wait for the rapture or some stupid shit like that. And that is a pretty bad strategy. Actually, it's lazy. But there's there's this sweet spot in the middle, and I think right now we got to get in touch with that. I think it's really important. I think it's really important because we are headed to a place in our time that our faith is going to be tested like you won't believe. And if you don't have it, if you can't stay close to your source during this time, you're in for a ride, and not a pleasant one. Okay, I mean, look around you right now. I mean, conditions are very challenging, and the people that I know that are successful are the ones that can work through the noise and the clutter and the blame. And there is a lot of blame to go around, trust me. But at some point, we have to back off the blame, and we have to take control of this thing. Then we've got to start operating from the inside out. Because we all know the game that's going on. We all know that. We can see it. We can look at the symbols. I could if I wanted to, I could work 24 hours a day breaking down global events and showing you what's happening. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. I think you need to be aware. But, what's the answer? The answer is in you. It's in me. And it's a time now for us to get in touch with those sacred spaces inside of ourselves. And do whatever it takes. Do whatever it takes to do that. Because I think if you do that, what you'll find love. You'll find love. And when you find love, then you're, and I'm not talking this flaccid sort of, oh, it's just love. Just love. It's not quite like that. It's different. When you find it, you'll find the greatest thing, the greatest treasure that everyone is on the hunt for, whether they know it or not. Okay, so Wednesday, back onto the astrological matrix tip. I'm not sure if I'm going to have a guest. It's 4th of July on Wednesday. So maybe I'll do a show on the astrology of the U.S. Well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to see if I can get Jay on for the Wednesday show. He might be busy, but I might just do that. But I am going to do an astrology of the U.S. on Wednesday. And I'll do some readings if people are into it. I love the 4th of July. And I also have a lot of, nostalgia and even sadness sometimes. Like, I'll never forget the first time I saw, the day after the 4th of July. And I grew up in a firework town. It wasn't like everything was legal, but, Red Devil fireworks were everywhere. And, we used to buy these fireworks. I loved buying fireworks. And I loved buying firecrackers and M80s. And I loved skyrockets and bottle rockets. Love that shit. But I'll never forget, the day after always bummed me out. All these firework remains on the ground. It was like so much fun last night. Now it's just paper. Bummed me out. Anyway, I'll do a fireworks show, a 4th of July show on Wednesday with astrology. And then Friday, who knows? We'll see. All right, so I want to thank everybody who listened. I want to thank Erica in the chat room, the hostess with the mostess. And you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to say when it's possible, and get in touch with that source. I recommend it. See you on Wednesday.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.